We're here at Supreme Lending. You know why I'm here at Supreme Lending? Because they're the best. And they're the best because they have a culture that you can't crack.
Supreme Lending is the best because their response time is right on the target. They correct anything that may happen, although it doesn't happen very often. And they are customer service oriented for your clients. They will give the best service ever.
Supreme Lending is the best for close time and customer service. You can't beat the two of those things. And you combine them in tandem, you're not going to beat the service that you get with Supreme Lending. Period. End of story.
Supreme Lending is the best because if I give them a deal, I know it's going to close 100%.
Everything that they do is seamless, smooth. The process, the time, the organization, and everybody that you work with there is absolutely top notch.
They love what they do. They bring a passion to everything and a heart of gold, and it shows with the way they do everything from customer service to treat their clients to their agents.
I actually just had a personal experience with Supreme on my own purchase, which was able to close in 10 business days, knocked it out of the park, got me an amazing rate, saved me tons of money, and it was an amazing experience. So just start with Supreme.
Supreme Lending is the best because they always answer the phone no matter what.
Supreme Lending is the best because they're efficient, they're speedy.
But you can't say they're one of the one.
What do you say? Why are they your favorite?
Because they're the best in the business, baby.
Supreme Lending is best because our vision, it calls us to become the best, which is our individual and our collective destination. We believe the road to best is simple, and we also believe that simple is often brilliant. The road to best at Supreme and in life is living our mission, serving others before self. Serving others is simple, but it's not natural. It requires intention, and it requires leadership. The reason we've gathered today. Leadership. John Maxwell famously said, everything rises and falls on leadership. Simple and brilliant. With this idea in mind, Supreme decided to invest in its leadership in 2022 and to also offer that opportunity to its partners in the real estate community. Thank you for joining us today, and thank you for spending time with us through this series. We started the Supreme Leadership Series last month with John Maxwell focusing on what leadership is and what the best leaders do. In total, we will host 8 leadership sessions in 2022. John Maxwell will be with us for 4 of the 8 sessions. In between, we'll be focusing on specific aspects, areas of expertise that you need to run as a leader a successful, a championship business. Today, we'll continue to focus on what the best leaders do. They hire the best people, the people who best embody the culture of the organization and have the best skill set to be in the best position to play for the team. At Supreme Lending, we're working towards building a championship season in 2022, at home, in the workplace, everywhere, with everyone. Championship seasons, they start long before the game is played. They start by recruiting championship players. Recruiting and hire the best players is simple to say, but it is arguably the most difficult thing that we do as leaders. Get it right, and you're on your way to building a championship season. Get it wrong, and it's painful for everyone involved as the cost in terms of financial impact, and more importantly, the human and cultural impact is tremendous. You see, it's not just about talent, it's about the best fit. Associates that fit your culture and share your values. Those players then must be placed in the best positions to contribute the best outcomes. Today, I invited 2 leaders who are both experts on the topic of recruiting to help you become better in recruiting. Dr. Ike Reighard is the CEO of Must Ministries in Cobb County and the pastor of Piedmont Baptist Church. Additionally, He was the Chief People Officer for Home Bank Mortgage. He's been responsible for recruiting and hiring hundreds of associates. Mike Ray, he's the Director of Keller Williams Southeast Region, responsible for recruiting and launching thousands of careers. We've assembled the best, and they're ready to help you with this key step towards building your own championship season, recruiting and hiring the best associates. This is the Supreme Leadership Series. Dr. Ike and Mike, welcome today.
Thank you, sir.
Well, I'm going to draw on both of your experiences today. Once upon a time, I was asked the question, what's the biggest risk that your business has? And before I even gave thought, I said the next person we hire. And so today we're going to take up that topic, which is really something all of us do, which is recruiting, but becoming exceptional at it, the best at it, would change the destiny trajectory of all of our businesses. So let's go to work. Dr. Ike, I'm going to start with you.
Sounds good, Pat.
Yeah, we've got some history together.
We do.
We worked together for 7 years at Home Bank, and you and I spent countless and countless conversations on this topic, countless hours to get the process right in terms of hiring. You've also, other than working together with me as the Chief People Officer, you've also baptized me 3 times.
That's right. We're going to get it right.
Right, exactly. I often wonder whether or not it was 3 times because it took me 3 times to actually get right, or whether or not you just thought this guy's been some places, I need to make sure I get it right with him. And we've also done some weddings together. You married both of my children. I thank you for that. And on the topic of wedding, you just had yours married just recently.
My baby girl just walked down the aisle, and she wanted me to walk her down the aisle. And when she got to the front, she wanted Pat Flood to be the guy that did the opening prayer and the opening comments. And we'll always be indebted to you for that. So definitely our lives have been intertwined.
It was awesome. And she dressed you today, and so you look
did.
really good, brother.
She always does. I have my beads on. I'm ready to go.
We'll get everybody Abby's email address and social, so in case you'd like to have her dress you. Anyway, how many weddings have you done?
Gosh, literally thousands of weddings. You know, I've been in ministry now for 47 years, and so there's a lot of weddings that go on during that time, and I've been very fortunate to be able to be there because, you know, that's the event that everybody remembers. Everybody remembers you for is doing their wedding. So it's really great when I have couples come up and tell me that I did their wedding, and honestly, they look much older than I am. But I realize that I don't look as old in the mirror because I have cataract issues, but I'll just stick with that for right now.
So weddings are kind of a big deal because we're recruiting.
Yes, we
We're
are.
recruiting a partner for life,
That's
right? And yet, in the workplace, when we talk about recruiting, by the way, in all the weddings that you've done, anybody like met that day, got married that day by you?
No, sir, and I would not advise it at all.
Yeah, so there's a bit of a process, the interviewing process, if you
right.
will, which we'll get to in a few minutes. But I'm fascinated because even when you do it right, an interview, it's difficult to have a really successful marriage. And I think the workplace, all the data, all the statistics tells us exactly the same thing. The turnover rates, the lack of engagement and satisfaction rates. And yet we spend more time at work. I wonder if we got work right, like our professional life. If we recruited really good there, we'd go home happier if it wouldn't help the retention rates for marriages. So we're going to get to that in just a second here. So we got to measure what matters, and recruiting matters. And what I found is in my journey in business, talking to people, the people that measure the things that matter in their businesses, they know what matters and they begin to measure those things, they tend to really get things right. And so I hope and pray today that what we can do is just give a couple of tips away for folks that are here that do recruiting on the regular, so that they would be a little bit more aware of the magnitude of what's going on. So here's the way the world measures recruiting when it's not done right. The cost is both financial, but it's bigger than that. It's not just financial. It's time for the recruiter and anybody else that might have been involved in the process. But then it's time invested by everyone else to help that person not work out. customer service along the way. If they're not really right for the organization or right for the job, they don't really deliver the best service. It's morale for the organization itself. It's just the impact of comers and goers and the curiosity that that might create for people. And then finally, it's productivity when they're here. So let's get to work, see if we can help a little bit. Dr. Reich, there's this tool that you're kind of an expert with, which it's been around for a very long period of time, but you're certified in training it, and it's called DISC.
That's right.
And so I've got some questions of you about this. First of all, what is it?
DISC is an opportunity to be able to know more about people by just observing their traits in their life. And the actual DISC is just an acronym. The D stands for dominance. The I is about being with people and how do you like, interacting with people. Do you work better as a solo or do you like to work in a team? The S measures when you're talking about steadiness. The C measures compliance. And so when you start looking at all those different factors, we all have different levels. But normally, for most people, you're going to have two areas that are going to become your most highest plotting points on a graph. And it helps you to understand how to bring other people around you. Because with DISC, there's no good or bad. There's no pass or fail. It's just simply you taking the opportunity to get to know other people and to be able to observe them and then to be able to connect with them better. Because, Pat, the bottom line on all of this is no matter how good you are, no matter how much energy you might have, at some point you're going to max out. I mean, everyone maxes out. And then your success or failure is going to be predicated on the people that you have the closest to you. And that's why it is vitally important that you get it right. And the smaller the organization, even more important, the hiring that takes place.
Got it. So DISC is not only helpful up front when we're assessing talent to see where it will fit best, but it's also helpful in terms of knowing their profile, how we can best lead and influence them from a developmental standpoint going forward.
Exactly. You begin to learn how to be able to interact with someone. You find out the things you do not do. You find out the things that you do, and then you begin to work together as a team. You know, the old adage about marriage, because you use that as an analogy here, the old adage is that opposites attract, and they do, but then they attack because they don't get to know each other and they maybe haven't gotten to know one another. And you begin to learn what a person's strengths are, what a person's weaknesses are, and the beauty of it. And the Bible it really indicated this. It says a man shall leave his father and mother and cleave unto his wife. And the word cleave is a picture word, meaning the way you glue two pieces of papyrus together to make one smooth writing surface. Because, you know, there's going to be good parts in this person, and maybe they're going to have a few holes. There's going to be good parts in this person, but maybe a few holes. And when you glue them together, it makes for that one smooth writing surface. Every team operating in business is operating on the same principle. Everybody has strengths. Everybody has weaknesses. And if we can identify those and slot people in the right place, makes all the difference in the world.
So let's do this real quick. Give us a picture of a D. Who is it?
Well, wow, if I think about presidents and you want a D, I think about George Bush, 42, when he stood on the deck of an aircraft carrier, when he was pictured in an Apache helicopter, he was that take charge guy. And when he stood there at 9/11 and he shouted and he said, "We hear you and the world hears you and they're going to hear from us." That's a high D personality right there. D measures how do you deal with problems? How quickly do you deal with problems? And you can think of it like when you go to a restaurant. A person with a low D, they order their steak well done and it comes on the plate and it's actually bleeding. They'll just choke it down rather than send it back. But if you're a high D, you're going to call the waiter over and you're going to go, "This is not the way I order my steak and I want it the right way." So a high D is about dominance. And the I then is about interacting with other people. The higher the I, the more you want to be around people, the more you want to work together as a team. And the S is the pace of how people work. And not everyone likes a routine, but there are some wonderful people that are S's. They love a good routine. As a matter of fact, if you'll just leave the system alone, they'll be delighted and they'll work within that system. And the reason you should look for S's on your team is because they're the people that'll come and stick with you. They value longevity in an organization. And the C's, those are the people I need most in my life. This is the area where I barely have a heartbeat, and that's people who are compliant. The higher the C, the more likely they've never had a speeding ticket. Now, I'm a high I. I consider when those blue lights are going around in my rearview mirror, here's a great chance to influence people and make new friends. Because
You're going to stop and take a collection? Is that what you're
yeah,
doing?
I can take a collection. That's not a problem for a pastor right there. But, the C's are very compliant. They're the rule followers. I would not have anyone handling finances in my organization that is not a high C, because I do not look good in an orange jumpsuit going to jail somewhere. So getting the right people on the team, getting them slotted, letting them operate in their areas of giftedness, that's the key.
See, and a great team, ultimately, if you're a leader, a great team will be a composite of all of that, right? So knowing what you are, and then knowing as you're hiring and putting people on your team around, that came really to be a great revelation for me about 20-some years ago in my career, when I realized that, and you told me that vision without execution is hallucination. I remember you telling me that. And so it was frustrating to have vision and then not have enough C in the atmosphere to be able to take and prioritize the projects and then get them done right. So now we know DISC. What are you, by the way?
I'm an ID. Man, I love a great team. I love the pep rally. But if you won't get in line, then I can kick your butt as well if that's what I have to do. And I love building those teams. And Pat, the tragedy is people get misaligned. And Gallup's been doing this study now for 28 years, and you've heard me talk about it before. But 55% of people in America, when they were interviewed and asked the question, are you engaged in your job? 55% said, I'm not engaged in my job. And it got scarier from there. 16% of people said, not only am I not engaged in my job, I'm actively disengaged. And I know that some of your viewers have had the opportunity to work with an actively disengaged coworker. Isn't that one of the great blessings of your life?
It's a little bit like going to get a root canal.
Terribly painful. So add those together, you got a 71% disconnect rate. There's over 28 million people now have taken this survey over the years, and the statistics stay remarkably the same. So no wonder when you go to Supreme Lending and you get fabulous service and you get great servant leadership, no wonder people are enamored by it, because it's so rare to find today. And I think it's especially rare in the mortgage world to find someone that has that kind of attitude.
Yeah, we're not going to solve everyone's need today, and suddenly people are going to leave and they're going to be like the greatest recruiter ever. But it's like anything else, if it matters, and as a leader, the next choice you make about who to put on our teams, it matters greatly, and we just need to spend a little bit more time, effort, and energy figuring out how we can look at our past and our successes, copy those, and then look at our times that we didn't get it right and figure out how not to repeat that process. Michael, welcome today. Good to see you.
Good to be here.
Yeah, you stressed me out earlier. I said, well, how many offices are you ultimately responsible for? How many was that?
Let's see. The main offices are 61 of those. And then we have 35 business centers across the Southeast region.
Right.
And then there's almost 100 agent offices in addition to those. So just a few.
Yeah, no, I asked.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, stop it. I feel stressed out about it.
Right, I know.
But anyway, welcome today. And I've known
Thanks.
you for a long period of time. And you don't get to have the opportunity to be responsible for what you're now currently responsible for at Keller without being a really successful leader. And of course, without hiring well. Because as we know, the people that hire really well, they get promoted by the folks that they've hired. Ultimately, you get to be successful because of the people that you hire.
Right.
So I wanted to chat with you just a bit about Kpa. First of all, what is Kpa?
Right.
And then we'll get into some details about it.
So I know a lot of our viewers are Keller Williams associates and leaders, and we're very thankful for that. So Keller Williams has a built-in system for assisting our agents and our leaders with recruiting. And at any time they're recruiting agents to their teams, agents to their market centers, staff to their offices, so there's a constant recruiting and growth opportunity. So for years, Keller Williams has had a system in place. The most recent one, the one that we've had now for, gosh, almost 10 years at this point, is called KPA. It's Keller Personality Assessment. So it'll tie a lot of things together, similar to the DISC profile, and we still use DISC, and I know we're going to talk about that in a minute as well. But it is a system of personality traits and assessing an individual on responses, similar to how DISC would do that, and then overlaying those personality traits to jobs within the Keller Williams ecosystem. And so every job within our system, from Keller Williams corporate to an office to an agent to sales, all of those are aligned with a set of personality traits that best fit that role. And then we can assess you, Pat, or Dr. Ike. We could say, based on your personality assessments, you would score a high, a medium, or a low fit for any particular job.
Got it. So if we took a tool like that, assuming that there's been, well, let's just say thousands and thousands of people that have taken KPA. Right. There was a lot of work, obviously, because Keller's one of the best organizations in the world that went into developing it. If you found success as a leader in particular hires that you've made, any different disciplines, sales, any type of operating responsibility, would seem to me, going back and look at who would I hire all over again? Like, who are the top agents? Who are the top folks in team leader jobs? And capturing what that profile looks like. That's right. Is that possible to do with KPA?
That's exactly what they have done. And so they've created scales within each personality assessment, from a high performance to one side to a low performance, maybe how you respond, for example, in a social setting. Do you have a very high tolerance for people or a low tolerance for people? And where do you fall on that? And then take a role, like you mentioned, team leader of one of our offices. Where would a team leader best perform either a high end of that personality trait or a low end? And then we can assess personality behaviors and actions and how they all can fit together. So it's very complex. I think it gets better as you put more data in any system. The more data you have, the better you can assess it. And so KPA has grown and it's gotten stronger and stronger.
Awesome. Yeah. You know, we were fanatics when we were together at Home Bank. We had a tool that we built called ESP, which was really a tool against our own folks that had been with us for 5 years. And the way I defined it to them was the group that built it for us is, these are folks that I would let babysit my kids, and I'd get them back better after the weekend. So I trust them completely. And we're going to come back to that a little later in the program, have some fun. But then also, you know, these folks were highly productive. And we modeled a way to do it to where if you did not pass that ESP, we didn't interview. And we kept ourselves then from spending time with people who we just knew weren't going to be a good fit, because people go to interviews usually to get jobs.
They do.
And when we were talking about this earlier, Mike, when people are hiring and they have a need, there's a job open, right? I got to hire another agent to meet my quota for the month. I've got to hire another team leader. You tend to look past some things sometimes because you have to simply check the to-do box. I got the hire made. So if you were like talking to the crowd today about KPA, what would you tell folks, your experiences, what people aren't doing that they should be doing?
So a couple of things. Keller Williams should know, associate leaders know, this is a tool that's part of their franchise system. So they get access to this. They pay for access to this. So it's not a tool that they have to go out and find or seek. They're enrolled.
Already paying for it.
They're already paying for it. It's already there. It exists. That's right. And it's a system. It's a system, just like you were talking about. You put someone into the system at the beginning and you walk through the steps. And there are pauses along the way. You know, I may do a validation of the data to begin with. And if that tells me a lot of red flags, I stop and the process ends. So the entire hiring process, especially of a staff member, again, using our example of a team leader, it's just stopping points, interviews, life stories, group interviews, but if you'll follow the process from the beginning to the end, which most people don't, most of us get in a hurry, we want to shortchange. There's a lot of high D personalities from the DISC inventory in leadership, and they want to get to the finish line. They have an urgent need to fill, and so they shortchange the process, and when you do, it costs you money, because that's when a bad hire is typically put into place.
We didn't put the monetary numbers out, but what has been studied over the years is that the cost of making a mistake is 2 and 3 times the cost of the person's actual income. And when you start thinking about that, most people think because they're in leadership, that's their role, and it includes recruiting, that they're good at it. Listen, you know, there's a lot of things that I'm required to do and responsible for doing that I'm not very good at. So I defer often to other folks on my team to take more and more ownership and responsibility for things that maybe my DISC profile or my talent just doesn't naturally allow me to do well.
Right, and when you have a system like our Keller personality assessment, and it has the built-in stops along the way, it helps you when that's not your natural tendencies, when that's not your personality or leadership style that you would follow, to really pause along the way, like I said, and stop you from making those mistakes. It inserts other people into the process as well. So it's a safeguard, some guardrails to keep you out of the ditch.
You know, we talked earlier about meeting someone and saying, let's get married. Right? You know, if you just think about it, if you're in the audience, how often do you hire on the first interview?
Too often.
Far too often.
Far too often, right.
And it's mostly because we're already busy. We're inundated with responsibilities. There's a job opportunity available. And so we have someone, their experience appears to be good. And so we then want to like them. And we miss sometimes those critical messages that otherwise, if we were taking our time, we would really get right.
Or you or Dr. Ike has referred them to me, and I'm like, well, how could I not take their referral? Surely they've got to be the right fit. I'll just hire them without walking through the process. And even though they're a great referral, doesn't mean they're the right fit for your organization.
So Mike just took, for all the Supreme lenders that are watching today, Mike just took on behalf of Keller all of us off the hook. If you refer, we will give them the courtesy of the best interview process ever, but we won't feel obliged at the end. I had a experience about 20-some years ago with a pastor, and somehow or another, growing up, I didn't ever think that like I'd grow up and my best friend would be a pastor, and then I'd have these other pastors in my life as well. I think God just knew this guy needs a number of pastors, number of baptisms. But Andy Stanley gave me a CD at the time, so it goes back a day or two. And the CD was from Bill Hybels, a famous pastor in America, who apparently didn't get recruiting right very often. And he finally spent some time and distilled it down to what he ultimately decided were the 3 C's. And that was a process he used from that point going forward, which I have since used as I'm screening candidates. And the 3 C's are character. Do they fit your values as an organization? Competence. Do they have the raw, necessary intelligence to do the work that you're about to hire them to do? And the third one, which sometimes gets overlooked, is chemistry. Do you like them? And he went on to say, if you don't like them, you won't spend nearly as much time with them as if you do like them. And it's important to like them because you're going to be coaching them then. So it's one thing to hire someone who fits the role and responsibility. It's another thing to invest and pour into them, ultimately. Are you, what are you on the DISC profile, Mike?
I'm a DI.
A DI. So
just opposite. But same letters,
So I'm a DI as well. So the
right.
3 of us, if we were the board of directors, the company would no doubt be going really fast and the wheels would be coming off of the car. Okay?
That's right.
In fact, we wouldn't even know that the wheels need to be
blissfully unaware.
That's right.
We wouldn't even know that the wheels need to be changed,
That's
right?
right.
So we would
That's
need to
right.
import some S and some C,
Right.
right? My wife, Lisa, is an S, and so she creates that stability in our family, that steadiness in our family, that normalcy in our family. Thank God for her. Because
we're all thankful for that.
So let's talk about the process just a little bit. in my experience, everything in life that's successful repeatedly, there's a process that drives it. We could say it's about a person, but it really needs to be about a process. And then the person can make it, the playbook, work even better. But there is a process, and it feels like, let me just try this out on both of you, right? It feels like there's a way to talent assess based on the role that someone's going to go into, right? Once upon a time, I had somebody tell me, I have 20 years of experience, and I said, is it good? Wasn't it good? Well, there's some people that have been doing a job for a very long period of time, not very well, right? So the experience may not be so good. But talent assessment, we've talked a little bit about DISC. We use a company called Wonder Pro here, which is kind of an equivalent of Kpa that we've designed after our top people as well. So we do those talent, and that is kind of a starting point for us. So there's that. Then there is the actual interview process. And so we generally have a bit more, and I'll go through in a few minutes, but there's the interview process, and then there's the decision. Is there anything we're missing there with the process?
Well, I think you got a great process going. The one thing that I would tell you that misses from most of these, and Mike, I don't know if you would feel the same, but for instance, DISC does not measure values. And values are essential. Because you may have someone with great charisma and no character, and you're going to get chaos. You know, if we're going to connect all the C's here, that's the way that it's going to go. I always tell people that charisma will get you in the room, but character keeps you in the room, and then competency is what gets you into the next room. And life is a series of moving from one room to another. And we want to move with people that have similar values. Because if you don't have those similar values, there's going to be misalignment. And anytime there's misalignment, then there's going to be misperceptions that take place among people. And you'll find your team unraveling. And that's why it's important to find ways to measure what are the values that this person has. And fortunately, there's some great tools out there on the market. The group that I work with is a group out of Scottsdale, Arizona. And they have some wonderful tools to help me when I'm working with organizations that call on that part of my life for that expertise. I'm able to go in and measure values and then match it up to DISC and show the different ways that it can work together. And it makes it even stronger. So sometimes people treat DISC almost like a little pop type thing, pop psychology, when it has such much deeper elements that are there to it. If you take the time and you use the full DISC profile and really get into it, it's strong.
I found over and over again, not only from a hiring standpoint, using DISC, but especially from a how do you effectively talk to them and influence them and coach them afterwards, knowing those things about another human being, because I think we tend to project all of ourselves onto other people, and then we wonder why they just don't get it. And oftentimes it's the person that doesn't get it that's in the mirror, not getting it.
There's a piece in the Keller personality assessment similar to what Dr. Ike was talking about when you get to the heart of value, and it's the life story section. People are very uncomfortable talking about themselves. They will answer questions for you, but when you start really probing deeper, because that's when you start to know who they are and you can learn more about their values and their character. And there's an entire process of walking through a full life story. Gary Keller just modeled this at our recent family reunion convention with the current president of KW. And even the current president said it was an uncomfortable process because you were exposing things about your education, your life growing up, key milestones in your life. And that's where character and values start to come out, because you'll start to see what's important to that person.
Yeah, so I'm going to share just a bit, if I can, gentlemen. I wanted to humbly share a little bit about our recruiting process here, because it's yielded amazing results. And as I said earlier, Dr. Ike and I started work on this way, way, way back. We're a serial best place to work. And serial in this case is a good thing, top workplace. We were just recognized the third consecutive year by the Journal Constitution, which is pretty special stuff. Our turnover rate's 3%, which is You almost, when I tell that to people that are experts, they almost say, don't you want it to be a little higher? And the answer is no, but I understand why. We have a very productive organization as well. But we make hiring our top priority as a business. And that is, I think, important because after all, in the end, we are really going to produce to the extent of the people and the talent that surrounds us every single day and them being in the right roles. And it says in Scripture that a fool will hire any passerby, right? And I think oftentimes in business, that's what happens. You're hurried and you just make a decision and you hope it works out. But those don't work at home. They hope they work out and they don't work in the workplace. People that know us best, we talked about referrals, that really know us, they'll only refer us if they know that that person really could represent us. And we established our success profile against our top 25%. And when I now get to a candidate, which is at the very end of a process, my recruiting director says, think this person, think this person, think this person, because their skill set and their DISC profiles align into those people. So we're trying to, think about it, we're trying to hire, if we've hired the best people in the past, think about the one person that you're like, wow, it's the best hire I've ever made. And if you could hire that person over and over again in those roles. So we've discussed DISC. Wonderlic is the tool that we use, and it assesses two main areas. It's cognitive and problem solving. Because our business, let's say, especially today, has a bit of both of those things that are required, right? The cognitive is, can they learn our business? Can they actually learn what it takes, not to get a license, but to be owners of our customer experience? And then also, they really do need to know how to solve problems because we have them in our business more so today than ever. Initially, process. They take the test. Before they get an interview, they do that. Charles Smith, who is served our country in the Special Forces, he heads our recruiting group. They meet with him if indeed, after the initial contact, they've met our criteria as we've just described in terms of testing. And then Charles tells them, I strongly suggest that as the process starts, you go online and watch all of our personal professional best, learn everything you can about us, because in the end, that might chase you away, or it might actually have you say, this is the place I have to be, right? And that's what we're looking for. By the way, we don't want people who just want a job today. We want people who are desperate to be a part of what we're doing. Then they meet with 2 or 3 associates who are our success profile. And our success profile folks can then assess them, and they feel honored. By the way, retention, it's not just give them a promotion or more money, it's make them feel like they're important and valued in the process. And we then finally have them talk to people in the success profile with 1 to 3 years experience, because those folks have just gone through what the person that's sitting in the interview chair is about to go through. And the importance of that is, hey, this is a big deal, right? So you need to know, here's all of the stuff that you're gonna love, and here's all the challenges that you're gonna have. Let me give you also a couple of questions, if I can, to the audience. And of course, you can use any of these plays that are in our playbook or none of them. I ask people to tell me what they've learned about us during the process, because I want to know that someone's taken enough time to invest in knowing what it would be like to be a part of Keller Williams or Supreme. Then I asked them to take 5 or 10 minutes to tell us their life story, something that's obviously in the Kpa program. What I learned years ago about that is, if people are being honest, you'll hear about their joy and you'll hear about their pain. The things that are the best things that have ever happened to them and the things that maybe are not the best things. We then ask them for a moment in life when they've been successful at something, really successful, and then ask them to tell us how that success actually took place. What did they do? Because I'm a big believer that success is transferable. Once you understand the formula, you can take it with you, whether it was in athletes or whether it was in music, like the fellow running our program today. We then ask them to talk about an adversity that they've had in life, something that happened to them, and what did they do to overcome it? Because inevitably, all of these things ultimately will dictate whether or not they get to emerge and become a part of that group, that elite group That's at your organization and my organization, at your organization. And I found by having this process, which is 5 or 6 interviews, I'm the last interview, and when I get into the last interview, normally I say, I bet you're wondering, do we actually hire people or do we just interview people? And I've actually had more than one say, I was curious. But when we get there, we know something. These folks are absolutely certain that we're right for them. We also know they have the skill set and the background. And then we make far fewer choices. So 3% turnover is not luck. It's because it's intentional. And if you don't know your turnover rates, I'm just telling everyone in the audience today, you need to get measures out where how many people you hired, that's important. How many are highly successful productivity-wise against peer, really important. And how many stay? Very, very important. And I want to talk about that for just a minute as we close up here. So the reality is there's 5 top reasons why people leave. And money is not one of them. And most people think that it's about the money, but it's not. LinkedIn recently did a survey. Number 1 on the list, poor leadership. It's a good thing we're doing the Supreme Leadership Series here for the Supreme folks, right? Because we're responsible for people leaving. That's what the data tells us. And so we can make up a lot of reasons why, but we need to own responsibility for when people do leave.
That's the old adage that people do not quit companies, they quit managers.
Managers.
That's the leadership.
That's exactly right. So that's a big deal. Poor company culture. Having values on the wall is good. That means you have them, or you intend to have them. What people experience is so much more than that. What I found is that the closer the connection between those values, people understanding them before they come to work, and the experience, they wind up staying forever because this is their place. They're comforted by the idea that that's what my values are, and you are actually executing them to them every day. Professional development, most people think that's more money and more responsibility. It's really just the idea that people feel the environment is challenging them every single day, like we talked with John Maxwell, about getting better. And the best tend to get coached the least because we've got other problems. But the best, they still want to get coached. Tom Brady still wants to get coached. The best, they still want to get coached. Work-life balance was number 4. And number 5 was lack of appreciation, or as they said it, lack of words of affirmation. And a trophy is good. An awards banquet is good. There'll be one coming up here soon. Those are all good. But there's nothing like an unsolicited text, email, phone call to say, in case I haven't said thank you for saying yes. Thank you for saying yes. Because, by the way, we can do that with our spouses too. That works really well.
It does.
Yeah.
And you know that written affirmation. One of the leaders at Home Depot, the CEO, sat down and he wrote everyone a thank you note in the organization. Think how many people work for Home Depot. And so this one guy was talking to another guy about, I got this note from the CEO. And he said, that's not really from the CEO. He said, it's probably one of those auto pen things. So they put it underwater. And sure enough, the ink floated up. So he contacts the CEO. I listened to him tell this story. He contacts the CEO and goes, can you send me another note? Because I got the other one wet because I couldn't really believe it was from you. And so he turns around and he sends him that handwritten note. Words of affirmation is a love language, as Gary Chapman talks about. And it is so vitally important. Everybody wants to know, how am I doing? Am I doing all right? Am I doing okay here? And given that kind of, that kind of feedback on performance review, it is so important to people. Their families depending on them in that role. And so anything that we can do to encourage them, because, Pat, it's about sourcing, it's about engaging people, and it's about retaining people. And, Gallup says, and this is something you've always been fabulous about doing, Gallup says if you have a best friend at work, you're 7 times more likely to stay in that job. Well, you can't build friendships just being in cubicles, right? You got to find ways to put people together, and you've always done that, whether it was us building 35 Habitat for Humanity houses, and you're out there on Saturdays getting to know people, getting to know their families, or whether it was people who had the passion for running and they were raising over $1 million for the American Cancer Society. You put people into positions of knowing one another so that you're not just a cog in a machine, but it's a relationship. And if you want to cut down on turnover, begin to focus on relationships and not just replacing cogs that are just interchangeable. See people and see the value in people. Love on them, tell them you love them, and build that kind of a culture. And here's what will happen. Unhealthy people won't join that culture. When you build a healthy culture in an organization and they're drama people, they're not going to join your organization because they know it won't fly there. And negativity metastasizes. That's why having that positivity in an organization, that likability, building a place that people want to come to every day and their kids, they want them to work there, that's a place that's going to succeed.
You just said negativity and what it means to a culture. We talked about values and how they got to connect to truth, what people experience every single day. There are people, John Gordon wrote about the energy vampires and the energy bus, right? And sometimes because they're productive, they get to stay. Some turnover actually makes the organization better. And having the courage to decide that that's okay. We're going to go to questions here in just a minute. But for the next couple of minutes, please replace the word he says at the very end with another word. But I did get this approved with Dr. Reich. So if
yes, you did.
watch this Simon Sinek video about just that, making us better.
Worked with the Navy SEALs, and I asked them, like, how do you pick like the guys that go on SEAL Team 6, right? Because they're the best, the best, the best, the best. And they drew a graph for me, and on one side they wrote the word performance, and on the other side they wrote the word trust. The way they define the terms is performance on the battlefield and performance off the battlefield. So this is your skills. This is, did you make your quarterly earnings, whatever, however you want to translate it, right? Performance, it's traditional. This is, how are you off the battlefield? What kind of person are you? The way they put it is, I may trust you with my life, but do I trust you with my money and my wife? This is what they told me. Nobody wants this person, the low performer of low trust, of course. Of course, everybody wants this person, the high performer of high trust, of course. What they learned is that this person, the high performer of low trust, is a toxic leader and a toxic team member. And they would rather have a medium performer of high trust, sometimes even a low performer of high trust, it's a relative scale, over this person. This is the highest performing organization on the planet, and this person is more important than this person. And the problem in business is we have lopsided metrics. We have 1,000,001 metrics to measure someone's performance and negligible to no metrics to measure someone's trustworthiness. And so what we end up doing is promoting or bonusing toxicity in our businesses, which is bad for the long game because it eventually destroys the whole organization. The irony is it's unbelievably easy to find these people. Go to any team and say, who's the asshole? And they'll... they will all point to the same person. Equally, if you go to any team and say, who do you trust more than anybody else? Who's always got your back? And when the chips are down, they will be there with you. They will also all point to the same person. It's the best gifted natural leader who's creating an environment for everybody else to succeed, and they may not be your most individual highest performer. But that person, you better keep them on your team.
Okay, so we're back. I hope no one got offended by our video, but it is a point that's an important one for productive organizations like Keller and for Supreme to know is that if you've got someone that produces an awful lot of whatever, but they also produce an awful lot of drama and things that are in conflict with the values of the organization, you'll have other really good people leave if they have to stay in that environment because they feel it's toxic every single day. We're going to open it up for some questions now. I know Jim Alexander is here with us today. I would love, Jim, for you to ask a question because, well, you're one of the few special people in my life that has earned a bobblehead in our studio. So to the extent that you have any questions that you'd like to ask, please, James, fire them up.
Well, Pat, you honor me with what you said, and thank you. I feel the same about you. So I want to know, Dr. Ike or Mike, either one, do you have any ways that you can immediately see that toxic leader besides asking his followers?
The best way that you can spot a toxic leader is usually the turnover that's around them and the turmoil that you see. It's when if you have a narcissistic leader, that's one of the number one things that people run into, and they're highly productive narcissists that are out there, and you'll see that leader will just burn through people. They'll burn relationships. And so one of the first places that you can look to tell how a leader's really doing is you can look at people who've even left the organization. How do they speak about that leader? What do they have to say about them? And finding that great leader that you can really find that keeps their word, they're worth their weight in gold. So when you have a leader like that, get in, support them, be a part of what they're doing, and encourage that team and be a part of that positive force that, helps to make the leader, because it takes the whole team to lift that leader up, and also that team to help hold the leader accountable. Every leader needs accountability as much as anyone else on the team.
Jim, I'm so grateful that you are here today. And I'm so grateful to call you not only a friend, but a partner in our business. You know all my imperfections. And I love meeting with you because it's the most humble day, 2 days, 3 days of the year. So you can help invest in me, pour in me, and develop me. No kidding. So for the audience, one of the things that for all of us as leaders, he just asked the question about how do you identify them. If you'll trust certain people in your life and just ask them, they'll tell you the experience that they're actually having or that others are having with you. You just have to ask. Kara Epstein is next. Kara, what's up?
There we go. Some technical difficulties. Thank you so much for having me. How does one get a bobblehead? That's my first question.
There's no rules for it. It's just actually about 4 or 5 years ago, we started having guests come on our program. I told Mike now is going to have a bobblehead.
I'm excited about that.
Well, look, there's mine.
And it's fascinating because John Maxwell, when I took a picture and showed him a week ago, I'm not kidding you, it's the fastest he ever texted me back, the most excited I've ever seen John Maxwell about anything other than becoming a part of our program. But so we'll work on that offline, Miss Kara, because I think you need to have the bobblehead. Go ahead.
I appreciate that. And this also goes to Mike and hello, Dr. Ike. Question for you, because I think you've both seen a lot of great leaders and we've also seen toxic leaders. When you think of a great leader in your life, who stands out to you and what about them really resonated with you?
For me, the best leaders have been the ones that have led me from a servant leadership standpoint, the folks that were willing to roll up their sleeves and do whatever the task was. They weren't leading me from a position, they were leading me from a place of service. And you can spot those people a mile away because they have big hearts.
You sure can. For me, Zig Ziglar was that person as my mentor, my friend that challenged me to be so much more than I ever thought I could be. And his book, See You at the Top, changed my life. And then he introduced me to this guy that was running tapes in his garage by the name of John Maxwell, and made sure that we became friends. And then the guy over here to my right, Pat Flood. I've watched Pat in situations where millions upon millions of dollars were on the table, and he had to make decisions, and he never batted an eye to make the right decision, the moral decision, even when there was so much at stake in the moment. And that kind of leadership is so rare We're seeing it in the Ukraine right now, and the president there, the way he's standing for his country, the way he's willing to lay down his very life for his country is calling other people to their highest and their best. And so for me, it's that person who calls me to my highest and my best. And I'm never around you, Pat, that I don't feel that way. And that's why having you at the head of the aisle as I walked my daughter down was the most appropriate thing in the world, because of that love and respect that I have for you. And having those kind of leaders, Mike, I tell people all the time that I get asked this question more than any other question. How do I know what God's will is for my life? How do I know what God has called me to do? What's my purpose? And I always give them this challenge. I say, tell me your 3 greatest heroes in your life, not family members, your 3 greatest heroes. Tell me why. And it's those qualities that are calling you to your highest and your best. So that would be my answer.
Love that. Thank you so much, gentlemen.
Kara, and just for the audience, I've had the blessing of knowing you now for 3 or 4 years, and you have no lid, girl. And as they talk about leadership, and as John talks about lids, you're one of those really, really, really special people that embodies the possibility. I'm not telling Keller they should let you run the entire kingdom.
Well, thank you.
But if I was running it, I'd consider at least a state or 2.
I'm
You've done
blessed
great
to have
work.
learned from incredible people like all of you. So it's a
All
privilege
right.
to be in your world.
Yeah, Terrell Patton, you're next. What's up, Terrell?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right, how's it going? Thanks so much, Pat, Dr. Ike, Mike. And this is for 3 of you guys. I know, Pat, you said you and your organization use the Wonderlic. Dr. Ike kind of rely on heavily on the DISC, and Mike with the KPA. And each one of you said that process can be a little long. Tell me about, how do you build a bench? Or are you giving the Wonderlic out even when you're not looking to hire someone, Pat? And Mike, the same for you and the same for you, Dr. Ike. Are you guys constantly using those tools even before you're actually looking to fill a hire? So are you building a bench?
Hey, Terrell, you are right on it. Before we got the program started, Mike and I were talking, and we both got to the same point, which is we never stop interviewing. If we don't have an opening, that doesn't mean we're not interviewing. We're always interviewing. And I feel like that's the #1 responsibility I have in the role that I play, being responsible for Supreme Southeast, which is to collect talent that embodies our values and has the ability, skill set to make us better. And if we don't have a role, I'll be honest with you, I've hired folks along the way, we did not have a job for them, and I've just banked them, brought them in, had them do special projects or whatever else until we got a role for them because they were just too good to pass up. So I would just encourage you and all of the leaders that are on the session today to constantly be focusing on this topic, because in the long run, your lid will be removed by your ability to identify, recruit, and develop talent. I don't care what role you're in right now. If you're in leadership, over the long run, it won't be saving money that will get you another higher level of responsibility. It'll be collecting talent and having that talent get better while it's in your responsibility. Mike?
Yeah, and I would add, Terrell, from Keller Williams, I know you're one of our great team leaders. He was our #1 recruiting team leader of agents last year, by the way. Terrell, congratulations. I would add, I always KP every agent that would come into our organization, no matter what their production was, because you never know who you're going to find that's a raw talent sitting out there with an opportunity. And so by doing the KPA and validating that early on, you might discover somebody, and that's a step in the right direction always.
Yeah, and one thing I just finished with on the topic of leadership, there's a number of people, Dr. Ike was mentioning a few minutes ago, that have approached me over the years and have been curious about that, because the world teaches them, school and otherwise, that taking on a new title, position, as John Maxwell would say, and role is better. And it may indeed be for those people who God has given the capabilities and the natural gifting to do that. But as we talked about DISC earlier, not everybody is equipped the same. And I've always thought that leaders are born and then bred. They're born to affect and influence, and then they're bred to do it in a way that they decide to do it. At Keller, you do it with God Family Business. At Supreme, we do it serving others before self. I want to thank everyone for being here today. I really do. I want to thank Dr. Reich, you for making your time available. And it's the Ike and Mike show, right?
Named a candy after
That's
us.
right. And two of my favorite peeps that have just done great work themselves on this topic and a number of others over the years. And this video will be available starting tomorrow. We will also offer Dr. Reich to your group. He's a certified DISC trainer, and to the extent that today leads team leaders to wanting to get better and refreshed and how to actually use the tool to select and then to lead, we'll, I'm sure, be happy to offer Dr. Reich. And all I'll have to do is give him my beach house this summer and it'll be done.
That's
okay?
it. That's all it
It's
takes.
a simple. It's a simple.
I burned down the last one, so I think this is the right thing to do.
But anyway, thank you for being a part of our program today. We're going to be back with Horst Schulze, one of the world's greatest leaders on the topic of customer service, and he'll be with us on April 11th. Again, thank you for joining us today, and thank you all for your support of Supreme.